Begin this morning with a growing epidemic of opioid and heroin addiction deaths. The latest numbers showing the deaths have now soared into the many tens of thousands nationally, even dwarfing by far the amount of deaths in the U.S. from either car crashes or shooting deaths. Over the past decade, millions of American families have been drawn into this opioid crisis, in many ways triggered by the overprescribing of legal pain relievers like oxycodone. When authorities realized what was happening and they cracked down on the painkillers and those distributing them, the already hooked opioid addicts found themselves unable to get the pills, and so they turned to street-level and much cheaper heroin. The over 50,000 deaths now across the country are across every demographic, every age and socioeconomic group, advantaged and disadvantaged, educated and not, young and old. So what is the answer to this spiraling threat? Joining us now is Dr. Jeffrey Reynolds. He's a recognized expert in the field of addiction on Long Island. He's with the Family and Children's Association based in Mineola. And welcome to the show, Doctor.
Thanks for having me on. I appreciate it.
Pretty grim news.
Absolutely. It feels like it's not getting better anytime soon. And year after year, I've come and spoken to you about how the deaths continue to climb. And there's a couple of reasons. And the key reason is we haven't yet gotten serious about doing prevention, making sure that access to treatment is readily available, and then supporting young people in recovery. We still have a lot to do.
Is it fair to say that, everybody in it together kind of unintentionally created this addiction nightmare?
Yeah, without a doubt. This was many, many years in the making, although for most people it feels like it appeared overnight. It actually didn't. And the problem really is that this has hit suburban communities pretty hard, and when folks think about the average heroin user, it's not a suburban kid from Garden City or from Westchester.
No matter what we were talking about, no matter what stereotype you come up with of what type of person there is, there's somebody doing this and hooked on opioids.
Yeah, this crisis has blown it all open. But what I would say, as we talk about the deaths, there's also some real big success stories. And each and every day there are kids that are coming home from treatment and they've found that path to recovery.
Explain how it works, because, some people sitting out there have heard all this stuff. If you're sitting there with this problem, you may think it's hopeless. It's not, though, right?
It's not. Although there are some issues with insurance companies still in getting into treatment, treatment is available in every community across New York State and the tri-state area. I think the key is acting early. Very often parents and family members tend to keep quiet about the problem.
There's a lot of shame, a stigma with this.
Yeah, there is. Particularly around the holidays. Nobody wants to ruin Christmas. Nobody wants to make a big thing when people are over. The earlier you act on this, the better off that person's going to be.
So are we rethinking these pain medications? Because they're much stronger than we thought they were in terms of hooking people. I don't know whether there was a material available to the FDA 20 years ago or to the people producing this, but clearly now we've seen, not guinea pigs, with our real population, that these can kill you.
Yeah. Richard, I think we've made a lot of progress. Nobody wants to see folks who are struggling with chronic pain struggle with that pain without access to cutting-edge medications. At the same time, I still routinely see folks that are leaving doctors and dental offices with 90 Oxycontin for a root canal. That's a prescription for disaster, and that's part of the reason we got here.
Well, what are the rules then for somebody who's not a direct medical person in an emergency situation where clearly people would say you have pain, like cancer patients or someone who had major surgery? Going to the dentist doesn't seem like a place where you should be getting oxycodone.
Yes, and the state legislature acted very affirmatively this year to say that shouldn't be happening.
Is that going to change? Has it changed?
I think it is, and I think increasingly law enforcement is beginning to hold prescribers accountable and say if somebody leaves your office with 90 Oxycontin that they didn't need and something bad happens to that person, you have a problem on your hands.
You have a responsibility for that, because it could even maybe not be that person. Another member of their family sees this big bottle of pills that mom or dad seems to smile after they take one.
Absolutely. And we see home robberies done expressly for the purpose of gaining access to medications. If you figure that some of those pills have a street value of $40 per pill, 90 of those comes with a hefty price tag.
Well, now, the criminal element has not, they're not unaware of this. They've taken notice, have they not?
Without a doubt. And so we've seen the heroin trade move steadily into gang activity here on Long Island and elsewhere in the tri-state area, where you begin to see gangs recognizing that there's a whole bunch of addicted folks in communities that need to get their hands on the heroin.
Yeah, I'm still struck by the grandmother that I met whose grandson's friend told her how she could get heroin, and because she couldn't get the opioid pills. This is a 64-year-old woman who got hooked on heroin.
And it's actually, kids will tell me that it's cheaper and easier to get than a 6-pack of beer. And so right now heroin's going for less than $10 a bag. readily available, usually deals made via cell phones. Kids can pull up to a convenience store and score a bag of heroin in 10 minutes for less than $10.
So once somebody's already hooked on this opioids, what's the alternative treatment for them so they can get back to their lives?
Yeah, so there's any number of treatments that are available out there. Everything from outpatient treatment, which FCA runs in 2 communities on Long Island, inpatient treatment, and then we have, more than ever before, some pharmaceutical interventions that have shown really promising results.
Such as?
Vivitrol, Suboxone, and then, of course, there's methadone, which has been around since the beginning of time.
More than marginally better?
I think so. But we still have a long way to go. You know, what I always say to folks is, look, the key is early identification. The key is access to treatment. And this, for many folks, is a long-term chronic disease. It's not something
well,
that
we
goes
see it
away
being
overnight.
accepted by insurance, a recognition maybe by society that it is an illness and is recognized by medical professionals that way, taking away some of the shame that comes with having this sort of a problem. But now, what about the money to do this? Because there's clearly not treatment beds. We hear all the time that people couldn't get a treatment bed. And there have even been stories of people who've died because of that.
Yes. You know, Congress recently put $1 billion behind this fight. You know, we hope that money hits the streets very, very quickly because, frankly, it's been a long time in coming. There aren't too many other scenarios where you declare a public health emergency and then wait 10 years.
And do nothing about it, because I haven't really seen that anything has changed, personally.
We haven't seen big changes. We're starting to see some of that in New York State.
We've been talking about this for 2 years now.
Yeah, we're starting to see some change in New York State. We're about ready to create the first recovery center ever on Long Island. There are some other things happening statewide, but we need it to happen faster. Folks are dying day after day. In fact, as you mentioned, the stats in the beginning, every 6 minutes somebody's dying of an overdose.
It's unprecedented. There's never been anything that's had this kind of a spiraling spike. How do you know if somebody's in opioid distress? You talk about it being the holiday season, a lot of people partying, and what are you supposed to do if you see that?
So there's a whole bunch of signs and symptoms that relate to addiction in terms of changes in finances, including dozing off at the table, those kinds of things. But the most important advice I can give families out there is trust your gut. If you think something's happening with a loved one, odds are it is. And the sooner you reach out and get help in terms of how to navigate that, the better off they're going to be.
Yeah, because the next 20 pills or a fix might just kill them.
Yeah,
so you're not interfering. You're caring about them.
Absolutely.
Dr. Jeffrey Reynolds from the Family and Children's Association in Mineola. Thank you very much. There is hope. We don't want to leave it people thinking otherwise.
There is hope.
Thank you, sir. And when we return, what